Welcome on into this week's episode of Digging Deeper. I'm Matt Cordy, joined here today by a man who has a face like the face of an angel. It's Pastor Gabe Kasper.
Gabriel, you know?
Yes. It's fitting.
It's fitting.
Suits
it's fitting
you.
Indeed. Thank you.
Suits your middle name.
Indeed. Hey, listen. Listen. Let's not reveal the secret to the world, my friend.
Yes.
Yeah. How are you, Matt?
Doing well.
Good.
Could be better. I don't
Same.
know. I know you've sharing the sentiment.
I do.
For a lot of people that may have been paying attention to the beginning of your sermon.
Yeah.
World Cup's happening. U.S. was actually playing well.
Yep.
And people might have even heard one of our stars, Flo Valgan, got a red card.
Yep.
Little did you know during your sermon that was actually suspended.
I did not know
discipline.
that.
Yeah, Marcus came running up to me. I think he was literally skipping down the hallway.
It's true.
As I might describe. And he was quite excited. But it turned out the White House phoned the president
What is
of
the
FIFA.
world we live in right now?
It's sort of a weird world we live in right now. But a victory for the U.S. until they actually played the game on the field, and it was not quite a victory.
Then it was not so good.
But I don't know, to keep this allegory going that we have here with the early church and the U.S. men's national team of 2026, there's some ups, there's some downs, and they fought through adversity. And then, I don't know, maybe the stoning of Stephen coming up ahead was sort of what happened down. The beating down of
this was
the beatdown of Belgium.
Yep, this is what the Belgium beat down of the U.S. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, that's probably it.
There's some ups and downs and everything, but
It's true.
yeah, hopefully there's some things that can be learned from it. And I know Stephen left a mark on the early church. Hopefully Mauricio Pochettino left a mark on the U.S. men's national team while he's
That's so
still
true.
our coach for.
I mean, the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church, right?
Yes.
So the church would not exist if not for the blood of the martyrs. So indeed,
Yes.
it lines up perfectly, Matt.
There we go. Well, we had to shoehorn that in. Thank you for appealing to us.
Thanks
there.
for indulging, friends.
Yeah, but U.S. men's national team is out now, so surely you'll never hear about them again.
Never.
From Pastor Gabe.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, I don't know, I probably reference them in a non-World Cup year at least twice a year.
It's about right.
That's
Par
about
for
right.
the course.
Yeah. So that'll continue.
Yeah.
I think. I'm sad right now, so it's hard to imagine it right now.
Yeah.
It's a very, very bad loss.
Well, to make you less sad, let's talk about
let's go.
cultural divides.
Oh, bing bong.
Yes. So once again, after you went through that intro, you talked about how that there was a cultural divide between the Hebrews and the Hellenists, and I think you did a good job explaining like what that actually was. And like when you're reading through there, like, okay, it's just sort of weird.
Like, who are these people?
It's just name dropping different groups. Where back then, like, this made a whole lot of sense. So I appreciated that context. And then you sort of made a joke. It was like, can you imagine having like a cultural divide making its way into the church?
Right.
Like, sort of played off for laughs, but at the same time, it's like, nah, it's funny.
It kind of happens all the time.
You can, it's real.
Yeah.
But then in your unused notes here, you actually have like a more specific honed in example here from COVID times that ultimately didn't make the cut here.
Yep.
But does a good job of illustrating how that there are cultural divides that can make its way into the church.
Yeah, and I mean, and I'll maybe address something on the front end here, and then I'll get into the one that I was going to use as an example. But this was a very hard sermon for me to write, actually. A large part of it was like, you know, when I preach, I want to talk about like, all right, here's what the text is saying, here's what it meant then, and then kind of here's what it looks like for us now, right? But anytime, you know, because a lot of this text sort of centers around conflict, a particular conflict. Anytime I'd try to give an example, I'm like, man, it feels like I'm sort of pointed at a particular group of people who have either left our church or are in our church or at our church body at large.
But definitely not me.
But definitely not you, Matt. Never you. You know, but so it was like, I didn't want to like, it's like comedians should never punch down, right? Like, and it's like, as a preacher, I don't ever want to punch. Like, I have a microphone, other people don't. So it's just not fair. Even if I'm as gracious as I can be, I was nervous about bringing up conflicts and sort of, I don't know, staring down my nose at anyone. And so I really didn't use too many examples and kind of just let people flesh that out for themselves.
Yeah, I think everyone has one or two examples that are fresh in their mind that they can pull from and be like, yep, that maps out onto this. This explains like different situations that they went through. So I think that it's something relevant enough that you didn't necessarily need to be like, here's a specific example
I mean,
that
I think
happened
that's
within
the
our
thing.
church.
Yeah. Like we get what conflict is, you know, like it's like, yeah. And we've seen it with other Christians. Like we all have. But the one that I did type out and I did have in there, but I pulled was culturally, and it's sort of question like, is this a cultural thing? But I think in some ways it sort of is. It's just like, during COVID, I mean, that was obviously a major inflection point kind of for us as a country as a whole. And that really bled into a lot of churches. I mean, massively. Our church was not immune to that. Now it wasn't huge. Like we didn't lose a ton of people, but we definitely had some people who were very kind of summer of 2020, sort of Black Lives Matter protest, very motivated, sort of left side of the aisle. And we, of course, addressed structural racism and stuff like that too. And I think did the best we could, but for some people it wasn't enough. Right. And so it was like, we're done. And then for other people, it's like getting vaccines or requiring people, I mean, we didn't tell anyone to get a vaccine, but telling people they got to wear masks in worship and having to sign up and like being somewhat restrictive in how we did our worship. That was seen as too restrictive and that we were capitulating to the state and And so they left, and so there were some real people where it's like they had very strong political opinions that frankly in many ways are more culturally inherited than people may want to let on. But anywho, and so for some of those people, it was too much and they were out. And that was that. But for a lot of people, actually, we did have people that maybe had some pretty extreme views on both these things. And they're still here. And they stuck it out and they're still through it. And we're still walking together and we're still figuring out how we follow Jesus together. And it's because I remember a member who's very involved here and is a dear friend of mine who was profoundly against how we required masking and people signing up. Right. But this individual was like, listen, I'm part of this community and the mission matters more than my personal preferences on how we do this. I do think this is wrong, but like, I'm willing to kind of die to that in order to walk together and pursue this mission together. And I just really commend that person. And there's certainly, it's fine to disagree with what we decided as a church. That's okay. But then to say, I'm going to do that and I'm going to walk with you still, like that's awesome. And so I think that's a beautiful picture we see in Acts 6. Yeah. And it does happen. And then it also doesn't happen the other way sometimes too.
Yeah. So even here, you weren't necessarily focusing on the negative. Like obviously it happened, not going to breeze by and say it didn't happen, but at the same time,
it's really about these individuals who said, right, exactly. Exactly.
No, I like that. Now, similarly, along those same lines, when people do come to you with suggestions or just saying, people in general saying the church should do this or that, or they should do this differently, add this, take away that. Your main point is the questioning the motive or the why. Yeah.
So this goes back to really how I ended up kind of shutting down the sermon. Really where we see it come to a head is, conflict. I mean, this is just, I think this is just true. And feel free to, I'd be curious your thoughts on this, Matt. I mean, I know this is the most profound thing in the world, but I've thought this way for a while. Like conflict becomes unsolvable when you do not have a shared goal, right? So in many ways, like let's take our political moment as a country. I do think we're part of probably the biggest problem right now is that we have, let's just, for simplification, two very large and loud groups that do not have a shared goal. Like they don't have a shared vision of what the United States is. Whereas I do think previously in our politics, we had a shared goal of what it means for us to be a country. But this side said, we think the best way to get there is this way. And this side said, we think the best way to get there is this way. Like, that's fine. That's the nature of being human. We're going to have conflicts, but at least we're aiming towards this thing. Let's figure out, is there some way we can get there together, right? And so it's the same thing in relationships where it's like, if you have a couple where they're fighting and she wants out and he wants to keep them together, you're not going to end up in the same place. There's no way unless you have a shared goal, right? So we just have to, even in a friendship, it's like, dude, if you don't want our friendship to have this level of depth and richness and time together, if we don't share that same goal, then one of us can be trying to do this, the other one be trying, and it's just not going to, we're just not going to get there, right? And so it's the same thing as a church. The nice thing is the church, I would argue, well, and I'm right. I am. I think. I don't know how else to think about it. The church really, at the end of the day, has one goal, and it's faithfulness to Jesus Christ. Like if you were to reduce everything down, everything we do, existing at all, our goal is that. And so at the end of the day, that's what we're always trying to answer, is saying, what does faithfulness to Jesus look like? Now, the reality is, okay, like that's a broad thing though. So like tension comes in on like, well, faithfulness to Jesus means worshiping together and inviting people to hear the gospel and that sort of thing. And it involves caring for the poor, and it involves being good stewards of what God's given us. Okay, well, those things, let's say, require money. How do we allocate money for those things appropriately? And so that's where the tricky thing is.
The how.
Right. But if our question then becomes, well, what's the most pragmatic way to do it? Or what's the most traditional way to do it? Or what's the most whatever? That's stupid. That's not actually, then we're missing a shared goal. Because then I can be aiming for pragmatism, and you, Matt, the old traditionalist, can be aiming for traditionalism.
Right.
And we're never going to get to the same place. But if we say, hey, we're trying to be faithful to Jesus, let's think about this pragmatically. Let's think about this in terms of, like, let's work these things together. So all that to say, if you, my friend, if you go to ULC, or if you go to any church that is good, and you think like, hey, I think the church should do more of X, Y, or Z, more social programs, more Bible studies, more carpet colors, whatever, you should be able to say, because it helps us be faithful to Jesus. Not because it helps us be like the church next door, not because it helps me feel cool, not because it earns me brownie points with some political ideology. No, because it helps us be faithful to Jesus. That is always what we're trying to answer.
Yeah, that has to be the why.
That has to be the why.
Yeah, because if we're not on the same page about that, what's the point, really?
What are we doing?
Yeah.
Exactly. But I do think, I mean, I don't mean to sound too, pejorative towards other churches, but like, well, maybe us at times too. Well, yeah, it is us at times. We can lose sight of that why. Like, that's the thing. Like, we really can.
Yeah.
And that's the real issue. When you lose sight of that why, that most basic one, that's cause for serious concern.
Yeah. And I think it's a good thing that like the early church seemingly, at least these apostles and disciples seemingly did not lose sight of that why.
That's right.
Like they took joy in like their sufferings around that why, like that we heard from Pastor Marcus last week, where like they're getting persecuted and like going through all, like getting arrested and nearly put to death, and they're taking joy in that because of this faithfulness that they're able to have in Jesus. So
yeah. I think that's exactly it. And I think it is to say like, man, can I learn to love faithfulness to Jesus that much that whatever hardship it brings me, I actually can still have joy, you know? And it is, it's funny, like, I've had moments like that, if I'm honest. Like, maybe that sounds like arrogant, but like, I was just thinking, I mean, I told last week's story about this haunted house convention I preached at, right?
Yep.
That was 2 weeks ago. But then I was thinking through, like, I did a wedding at a music festival, and I've maybe talked about it up front. I can't remember, or with you, but like, it was weird. Like, I had to drive out of my way. People were not comfortable I was there, and I was pretty unapologetically going to talk about Jesus. Sure. And I was unapologetically talking about Jesus in this like crowd, in this like festival where people are like on drugs, and it was like this crazy thing. Yeah. And I remember just being like, this is awesome. Like, it's like, and again, not that like I'm cool, but just like, this is the sort of space Jesus went into, and this is the sort of life we're invited into, and then, like, that's maybe a sort of like more public format of that. But like, there's times when I've had that in my life where I'm like, yeah, this is hard and I am tired. Or like, I mean, Matt, I'm going to pick on you, but like, I think of like, you're a father of a young daughter, and you and your wife, Becca, and your daughter, like, you guys serve, every month, or not every Monday, once a month on Mondays at Love Ipsy. Like, it's not an easy thing to do for you as a family. Like, that's actually not. Like, it's not in your job description. It's not a thing you have to do. Yeah. Like, it's not a convenient thing to do with a 2-year-old, right? Yeah. And yet, like, there's a certain joy in, like, yeah, this is, like, what it is. Like, this is the thing. This is the stuff. Yeah. And you only find that by doing it. I mean, maybe I'm putting that in your mouth. I don't know.
No, I think it's something we wanted to do. Moving to Ypsilanti, we were like, this is the perfect opportunity. This is starting up. Like, once a month was, like, the perfect barrier of entry for us. But no, I think it has been something where we've been able to make relationships with some of the people that come in for those meals. Sayla has a couple friends of like different little girls that are there. So it's fun to see that joy and to like spread that joy of Christ with others. But Yeah. No, I it's something that like I don't see as something of any sort of burden. I don't think Sale or Becca would say the same thing, but
Nice.
it's just something where. Like,
But I
you
guess
can't- you
I'm
can't
just
get
saying
away
though,
from it.
on the outside, it looks inconvenient.
Sure.
I get that.
Yeah.
Inside living it, you're experiencing joy, which is the thing.
Yeah.
But if I'm someone on the outside looking in, saying like, "Hey, you got a 2-year-old? How about you take her to like an old church building and serve tacos to 70 people on a Monday?"
Right.
Like people be like, "That just sounds exhausting."
Yeah.
But actually, it's in the doing of it that you find the joy. And I think that's so much of faithfulness to Jesus. And again, not that like you and I are perfect at it, far from it. Well, at least me, you're close. I don't know.
Closer.
Like, closer.
I'll take
Let's say
that.
closer. I'm far from it. No. But that, man, when you're in those places and like doing the Jesus stuff, there's a way in which it's like, oh, this is like a taste of what it was like for these folks at the most extreme end of it, really early on in the church.
Yeah. And it's cool to be able to look back at that with such detail
Yeah.
here in Acts.
Yeah.
Now, in the sermon, we had to fast forward a little bit.
Yeah.
Through verses 12 through 14. And that was really when Stephen was brought in and he was put before the Sadducees and the Pharisees. And he was accused of a couple different things. And you actually had some notes here on why he was accused of those certain things. And I'll go ahead and read the verses here, 12 through 14, and then let you talk about that.
Cool.
But starting here at verse 12, it says, "And they stirred up the people and the elders and the scribes, and they came upon him and seized him and brought him before the council. And they set up false witnesses who said, 'This man never ceases to speak words against this holy place and the law. For we have heard him say that this Jesus of Nazareth will destroy this place and will change the customs that Moses delivered to us.'"
All right. Right. Yeah. So there's the couple of verses I had to skip over just for the sake of time. But as you noted, I did talk about them, discuss them. So
Yeah.
a couple things we should note here, right? So this is Stephen being dragged before, essentially, what would have been the Sanhedrin, which is the same thing that sent Jesus over to Pilate to be condemned on the cross, right? So it's kind
Which I really like the parallelism you brought between Jesus and Stephen. I mean, like certainly it's there, but it's cool to like that you really drew it out there. So
good. It is cool, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they bring him before the Sanhedrin. Now, this would have been made up of scribes, which typically would have involved kind of the two predominant political factions at the time of what's called Second Temple Judaism, which is the time of the early church.
Funnily enough, they have their own divide probably, right?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Oh, within like those.
Yeah, within like the Pharisees.
Oh,
and
for sure.
Sadducees. Yeah.
I mean, without a doubt, right?
Yeah.
Like everything sort of subdivides within itself and in itself, right? But the Pharisees then are going to be your more like, to put it in contemporary terms, like sort of your politically conservative type people. That's more the vibe. Your Sadducees and theologically conservative type people. Your Sadducees are going to be more your politically and theologically type progressive elites type deal. They were a little bit more cozy with Rome. They didn't take all of the Old Testament as the Word of God. That sort of thing. But what you have, it's very interesting what these people who stir stuff up against Stephen is they try to intentionally, these people who necessarily, again, think Democrats, Republicans, aren't like always getting along in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
But these people who stir up complaints against Stephen sort of bring up a bipartisan bill, pretty cleverly. And they say like, this man is speaking against this holy place, meaning the temple, and he says Jesus of Nazareth is going to destroy this place, the temple, and will change the customs that Moses delivered to us. Okay, so for the Sadducees, the temple meant a lot to them. It was like that was kind of their main thing because again, they don't take the whole Torah, they don't take the whole what we would call the Old Testament.
Right.
All of that is the Word of God, and so they're like. So much centers on the sacrificial system of the temple for them. That's the magic.
Yeah.
Boom. I mean, not Pharisees obviously love the temple too. I mean, all the Jews love the temples, but Sadducees especially.
That's their thing.
Big deal, right? And then customs of Moses. I mean, that's like Jesus' whole critique with the Pharisees is that they pick on like the oral tradition of Moses, or like we don't even know it's from Moses, but the oral tradition of the rabbis, which kind of came to become authoritative even over and against the written word of God. And so they're the guys who are the teachers, the people of the book, who, like they're big on this. And so they intentionally highlight customs of Moses. So again, these false witnesses are really trying to bring a crew together against Stephen by kind of lying in both directions pretty intentionally.
Yeah.
And so that, there's a certain then it's like a dark parallel to what we see happening earlier in Acts 6, where the church is united when it could be divided by mission, right? You have the Hellenists and the Hebrews, and they could be divided, but the mission of faithfulness to Jesus unites them. But in the same way, a shared enemy unites people as well, right? Like if you're, this.
If I got one.
Go.
Everyone shared enemy yesterday was the United States because we got special treatment from the world governing body of FIFA,
right?
Where you have a Norway coach who didn't have any stakes in this game, the Belgium coach, the different federations all from all over. Like, of course, they're gonna see this as like some sort of special treatment that we get our star striker back.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's right. And so then they all can be against us, the big bad US.
Yep.
Exactly. I mean, right. That's the thing. And even, all right, so like that's a grand level of that. Even at a very small level, like if you want to make friends with someone, actually the easiest way to do it is complain about something that you both don't like. Like, I mean, and if you even like try to be conscious of it, like if like students, we got a couple months yet, but let's say you're listening and you have classes this fall, like first person you sit next to, if you look at the syllabus and just be like, oh, can you believe she's expecting us to take 6 exams or whatever? That's going to be your connection point, is actually complaining about this thing you both don't like.
So what's the healthy version of that? Like complaining about sin?
Right. No, don't complain. That's it. I mean, yeah, like that's the one. That's the funny thing. I mean, in your workplaces too, where it's like, how do you bond? There's actually a very famous Office episode about this. I just watched it with my son, where you get the employees from Dunder Mifflin in Connecticut. In Utica.
Yeah, Utica.
Is it? No, it's not Utica. Wherever it is.
Yeah.
But they get absorbed into the Scranton branch.
Yep.
And Michael's trying to get them together, and like everything he's doing is not working. And then he does something really bad, and they all are so mad at him that that's how they get together, right? And so this just happens. That happens in workplaces.
Yeah.
And so so the trick though is to say, can I bond with people over shared mission rather than shared complaint, rather than something negative?
Yeah.
But it's actually hard to do.
Yeah. That would be the goal though.
Yep.
And I don't know, one of the things I picked up from this too, and I wanted to ask you about was like, they say it's false witnesses and everything, but is there some truth to their accusation? Because they're saying like Jesus is saying that he's going to destroy this place, the temple, which in some ways, like not literally, but like he went into the temple, overturned tables, like when he died, like the curtain torn too, things like that, where like metaphorically, like he did destroy some of that. And then also like changing the customs of Moses, like certainly did change within the New Testament, and in a lot of ways, I don't know, maybe fulfilled is a better word for it. I don't know. But if it's talking specifically about like the Torah and like what was actually written by Moses, not these added on things by the Pharisees, like he did change that. So like there is some weight to like what they're saying at least. So I don't know how
I mean that's the tricky thing, right? Is like the best lies have a kernel of truth. Yeah. Right? Like that's the best lies have a kernel of truth. Or partial truths are great lies. And so, there definitely is something to that. So let's like look at a couple of those. Yeah. So one, when it comes to the temple being destroyed, and saying is that like in the Gospels, Jesus says, I will destroy this temple and in 3 days I will raise it. And then the gospel writers make clear he's referring to his own body, that him in himself is the temple, right? And so the gospel writers make that clear. But then you see when Jesus is on trial, they use, and the gospel writers want us to know this, they use his words against him. So Jesus never claims that he's going to destroy the physical temple that Herod built, but he does claim that his body as the temple will be destroyed, right? Additionally, though, he does prophesy that the temple will be destroyed. He doesn't say he's going to do it, but he does prophesy that it will happen, and indeed it does happen in AD 70, right? Yeah. And so at any rate, but there's that kernel of truth. Did Jesus ever say he's going to destroy the temple? Yes. Well, what temple was he talking about? Right. Right. And so that's like, it's the best kind of lie. So in the same way, is it conceivable that Stephen was saying like Jesus' temple was destroyed, his body was died or was killed and rose just like he said it would, And so then they pick up on that language and say like, oh yeah, we heard that. And then in the same way, changing the customs of Moses, again, Jesus says, I've not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. And yeah, he does definitely, when it comes to customs of Moses, he's always going after the Pharisees for following the oral tradition rather than the written tradition. So that's just straight up, that is true. In terms of like changing the Bible, which does seem to be what they're implying, Jesus nor Stephen would ever have said, we're going to get rid of the law, we're going to change the law. But we are saying how we approach it is now different, right? We don't follow the Levitical laws the way we would have had we been first century Jews, right? So that had to have been part of that conversation too. So again, it's partly true, but it's delivered in a way that's not,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And once again, mirrors sort of how they accuse Jesus as well. So
exactly.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, before we wrap up, in the sermon you were talking about how Stephen, when people were trying to shout Stephen down, like when he was preaching to the people, and you quickly mentioned that had happened to you once before.
Yeah.
This is digging deeper. We need to hear it.
Well,
if we're able to. I don't know if it's like
No, I mean, it's not that exciting. There's kind of 3 small stories. I said it happened once. It never, and I wasn't lying. This is the first one will be the one that's closest to it having happened. The other 2 I combined to make into one big thing. So brace yourself. Are you ready?
I'm braced.
Okay. So the main one I had in mind when I said like, hey, that's happened to me, I still think about it, was actually during COVID. But it was like we were back in person, but severely reduced numbers, like intentionally you had to sign up beforehand, blah, 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 blah.
Eventbrite.
What's that? Eventbrite.
Those were the days.
That was the life, dude.
Yeah.
And one Sunday morning we had, we have the co-op next door, Truth House, and there were 2 guys who were there who came to ULC and were drunk. And were you there that Sunday?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, because it wasn't.
I don't seem to remember this.
Like this is where, So no, you probably. I think people were there would remember it. And one was just like drunk and goofy and quiet. The other one was, at the very least, had a Roman Catholic background and like was actually shockingly well versed in theology, and was drunk and shockingly well versed in theology. I was kind of like, oh my gosh, like he was dropping some stuff that like. You don't know unless you know. And I was like, all right. And during worship, like while I'm preaching, I would say stuff and he would just be like, no, like about that loud. So it wasn't like a full, like you need to get down. But it was like my whole sermon, I was probably talking about, I don't know, salvation by grace alone through faith alone. Like I think I probably uniquely was talking about that. And he was just like, loud enough for people in the sanctuary to hear him, saying like, nope, that's not it. No, it's not right. And so it was very, very awkward. So that was the main one. Yeah. I've then had it where like I've been doing like, I'll teach somewhere, like I'll do a lecture somewhere or I'll speak to a group of people at a retreat or a conference. And it's not quite a like shout down, but it'll be like, there'll be it's usually another pastor and they'll be there.
They're the worst.
They're the worst audience. And they'll have like their hand up, but it's like I'm going to talk while my hand's up while you were trying to like teach, that sort of thing. It wasn't quite a sermon, but it's like interrupting me while disagreeing with me and not at really an appropriate time.
Do you address it then or like?
I do, yeah. And then I'm like, and I oddly am like pretty good about it. Like I'll be like, yeah, it's a very interesting point. So the way I'm framing it is this way. It seems like you're thinking this way, right? And you can kind of diffuse the situation and then people feel pretty comfortable in the person because they always just want to be heard. It's like, yeah, we get it. You read a book or something. That's great. So
nice.
I was about to say a whole bunch of things. So anyway, but yeah, so I just try to diffuse that. So yeah, so really the main one was that was the main one I had in mind was the drunk guys from the Truth House.
I was secretly hoping for something that escalated to fisticuffs, but
if only. I've never
no luck.
Never fisticuffs in while preaching or as a result of my preaching.
Probably a good thing.
That's
so
I would
try to keep it that way.
Yeah. 5 sure.
Yeah.
5 sure.
All right. Well, that's all we have for this week's episode. Coming up next week is the Gospel Stoned, and Pastor Marcus will be taking us through Acts 7, 44 through 60. And that's just the last quarter of that chapter. So if you want to read a full sermon from Stephen, head there first. I'm sure Marcus might touch on it a little bit, but
I hope so.
read.
Stephen's sermon is really good. So if
Yeah.
you don't, and it is the longest
Good enough that
sermon.
he got stoned.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And it's the longest sermon in the book of Acts.
Oh.
So
It's longer than Peter's too, huh?
yeah.
And then Paul has some doozies too.
And if you don't count the Sermon on the Mount, it is the longest sermon in the whole Bible. So, yeah.
Are your sermons longer than the Sermon on the Mount?
It's actually pretty close. Like if you were to read the Sermon on the Mount like out
Right.
loud at a reasonable pace, straight through, I think it takes, I want to say it's like 22 minutes, 22 minutes. So mine are longer.
Yeah.
But Sermon on the Mount's closer than you might think.
Yeah, not bad.
Not bad.
Not bad. You and Jesus.
Me and the Lord. Just trying
That's
to be
right.
like him.
Yes, aren't we all?
Aren't we all?
That's our aim. All right. Well, thank you for joining us here. Stay around for Amy and Nate. They're talking through Bigger Table, much like the table on Marcus's hat.
My name's Gabe.
Gabe's hat. I just called you Marcus. I'm
That's
so
all right,
sorry.
Hannah. What?
Well, all right. Well, stay around for Amy and Nate.
Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Nate and Amy
What up?
back again
I got it.
to talk about this past week's sermon and digging deeper with the music. And I just loved the sermon. I loved this idea of, the church really hasn't really changed. Like it's, I loved when Pastor Gabe was talking about how a healthy church does not mean it's free from conflict. It actually grows from conflict and works through it because, like he said, if there's people involved, there's going to be conflicts. There's going to be differences of opinions. Yeah.
Yeah, except for us. I mean, we don't. No, yeah, we were. I guess it's not really. We
not
haven't had too many
conflict.
huge conflicts. I mean, I feel like the Greek and Hebrew world combining was a pretty big. It's going to cause bigger things than some of the things we have, but just like the idea that growth comes from this tension, and that God is the one who finds the path, and our peace through it is by all of us having our eyes on Jesus. And we were just talking about like some of the ways that we've done this at ULC and the vision leadership kind of meeting.
The
that we
summit.
had.
Yeah.
And just hearing from everybody, and we started in little groups. We kind of talk about what our vision. What would if God did? What was it? If God started moving, and
What would we want to see? What do we think it would look like? Yeah. What would our vision be? What is our wow of that? Yeah.
Yeah. What would we go? Wow. So, and then we all came together at the end and shared and kind of voted on everything, and it's just like as a community, we're bringing all our different visions and looking at it, looking for God and seeing where do we all, not every vision can fully be realized all the time, but we can kind of see where God is in the midst of us by coming together and listening and praying.
Yeah, and I talked a little bit about, in my personal experience, I've been in churches where it wasn't a shared vision. And that's one of the things that we're just so blessed here to have at ULC. We have leaders that know that it's important and so much more beautiful that we all come together and compromise and come up with what is best for the community. And so I just think that's really cool. It helps us to be able to walk together and really not feel like we're alone, but actually together. And
It's not, here's the leaders and here's the people, right?
Yeah.
It's always this, we are the church.
We're going to make it together. And so the song that we chose, I think we've done it before, but it just really fits. It's called Bigger Table. And the first verse talks about how we're gathering around the mystery. And it's really a story of love in our broken history. And how grace heals the fault lines in me time and time again. It welcomes us into a house for the hungry, a well for the thirsty, where all saints come together. I think it's so cool.
Yeah. Nail on the head. Yeah. Love in our broken history. It's like, that's Acts. And so, it's by reading scripture, it's like, you're not surprised, because it does feel like every time a conflict happens, you're like, how is this happening to us?
I'm in a church.
Yeah.
It should be perfect.
And then you read the Bible.
Yeah.
So thank God for that.
So we're going to sing this song. Come gather round the mystery of love in our broken history, where grace heals the fault lines in me. Time and time again, it welcomes me in to a house for the hungry, a well for the thirsty, where all saints come together, shoulder to shoulder. Welcome for the traveler, new wine from the vineyard. In all things, God is able. Love has a bigger table. There's an empty seat waiting next to me. We gotta make some room for each other. Let my enemy be my family. Fill my cup till it's running over.
Thanks again, Amy and Nate, for going through Bigger Table with us and just talking about conflict within the church and just how if our aim is set on faithfulness, that we can overcome that. And I loved hearing that from you guys and just hearing you sing that as well. So thank you for that. Coming up next week will be the Gospel Stoned. Pastor Marcus will be preaching on Acts 7:44 through 60. So go ahead and head to Acts chapter 7 if you're looking for a head start. We'll catch you here next week with Pastor Marcus. Have a blessed rest of your week.